Let's say you're a graphic designer and you want to make some kind of image like these, where you have whatever graphic or icon or something in the front and then a texture in the back. And maybe it's a rock wall or some kind of cloth or a hardwood floor, whatever it may be. There's, infinite number of things you might want in the backdrop when you're branding these things. How do you make those assets? The first answer probably being just take the picture yourself or stock images, but most of the time the lighting's wrong or the camera angle's weird or you wish you could tweak the colors just a little bit and it's not exactly what you want. So how do you go about making those assets quickly because you don't have the time to sit here and make everything pixel perfect individually? What I use is called the Adobe Substance 3D Assets. So this is essentially a library of just materials, models, and 3D assets that you can use to make your scene, to render out stuff and get things exactly like you want because it's 3D. And I know most graphic designers are pretty scared of using 3D, but I would just want to show from beginning to end how I use this stuff quickly and easy, pain-free. So for starters, what I will show you is you're going to need the Substance 3D collection. So it's like all the apps, but also access to, you see here, Substance 3D assets. So you get little tokens or however you call them, where you can download each of these individual assets. So if I just go to collections, for instance, and they got all these different groupings, I don't know if I wanted something in graphic design, they got all these materials here. And so like if I download this one, it's going to take one of my 1,000 things. So, you're not really going to run out of these things, but just so you're aware. But essentially, once you download whatever it is you want, you're going to use Stager because I find that way friendlier for people who don't know 3D than like Blender or Cinema or something. So because setting up cameras and lights and whole scenes in those other 3D softwares is usually a big pain. So I just want to show you how to not make it a pain, make it just super easy on yourself. So let's say I want, I don't know, a rock wall. So I'll just put rock in the search bar. Actually, I'm still in graphic design, so let me just go to the main page and I'll say rock. And so you'll see there's a bunch of materials, but also like atlases and actual models, but we'll just go ahead and search specifically materials. So I want like the cracked and crumbling rock. Like for whatever reason, this is exactly my perfect asset. What I'll do is go ahead and open Stager, and you can see in my downloads, the file is downloading. And again, I'm kind of walking through this process like as if you know 3D, because I think this kind of workflow is super useful for graphic designers who just don't use 3D and are too scared to kind of figure it out. So this is kind of how you would go about it. But my thing just downloaded, you can see it right there. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and create a plane, and if I right mouse button will rotate my camera, I'll actually go ahead and make a new camera. So you'll see in the layer stack here, when I click this camera icon, it'll make a camera. All my settings are here, and I'll just drag and drop my texture that I just downloaded and drop it onto the plane. And so it will load there. And so you can see rock wall. Obviously though, it looks like crap. So how do you make it not look like crap? First, I'll go ahead and turn on ray tracing. And so that's like accurately showing how the render is going to look using actual ray bounces. I don't know the technicals of it. It makes the lighting look accurate. Anyway, so with this plane selected, we want it to kind of pop off the surface because right now it's literally just a flat plane. So I'll go into object and I'll go to displacement, go from uniform to uniform total face. And so this is essentially just saying how many faces are on this plane now, because before it was just one, because it's 4 corners and they make up this one flat plane, but now they make up 10,000 little planes. You can see in there just kind of like going up and down, but not at super high resolution because there's only 10,000 of them. So let's say I wanted something high like 1,000,000. So I'll put, I think that was the correct, no, that was 100,000. I'll put one more zero. So you can see that looks way more realistic, and the bumps of it like feel much more organic and not so kind of low resolution. So you can see looking better, but I want the ground plane turned off because it's clipping through the ground. So I'll just go environment, ground, turn off the ground plane, and boom, there, already looking really good. And so you can kind of get the idea already of how like I would use this to set up my camera perfectly, move lights around, and get the exact render I'm looking for. But for a little more control, let's say if I select this plane, I can go into the material and change all the different settings. Usually when you go to 4096 in 8K, the speed of Stager slows down a lot. I don't know why. So I usually just, especially when I'm working, keep it at 2048. And even sometimes rendering is 2048 is fine. But so set it to that. And you can also, in a lot of these pre-made substance materials, they have, if I hover the mouse over any random one, you'll see it's changing with each different version, because these are kind of made, I'm blanking on the word off the top of my head, but made so that you can change all of the variables within the parameters here. So like, let's say I wanted different colors or height ranges in different parts, because they're all variable. You can change that yourself, and that's kind of represented in these presets. So if I did from default to, I don't even know what that word is, orange stone, it doesn't just change the color, it's changing the exact pattern of the stone, because it's changing the different weights of each color and so on. So that's essentially what these all are. So like, let's say you're looking at one and it's close, but it's not quite right. There's a solid chance you can just change the parameters of that material and get exactly what you want. More so than those stock images I was telling you about. If you go on Shutterstock or Pexels or something, you can probably get close to what you want, but let's say there's just not enough pebbles in the gravel or whatever it may be. Like, this is a good opportunity to kind of tweak exactly what you're looking for. But okay, so let's say this is it. This is my material. I will go to my lights and I'll select something. There's no wrong answer here. But generally I tend to like these studio lights. So I'll just click a random one, and you're just going to click through these and see which one it is that lights the way you're thinking. And in this case, it's a rock wall. So honestly, I might go ahead and rotate it, because walls are meant to sit upright. They don't sit on the ground like that. So the light might just look a little more believable if it's upright. But so if, like, let's say I click on one and maybe it's again close, but not quite it. If you hold shift and the right mouse button, it'll rotate the camera, the light setup. But one thing to note with your camera, if you lock the camera, Stager has a glitch where if you try to rotate the light now, it doesn't do it. So that is just something to keep in mind. But I'll just go ahead and rotate it, and like something like this honestly might not be bad. I'll go a little more straight on, and generally I don't even like, you can in the camera settings go like exact position, say I want it exactly 90 degrees or whatever, so instead of 39 point whatever, I want it to be 50, make it perfect. I generally don't think that's a good idea, because the imperfections make it feel right, make it feel more believable. It almost feels cold and stale if you get things mathematically on top. But either way, I'll get it kind of positioned roughly how I like it. I mean, one thing to note here on the sides, you probably want to fill that. So I'll zoom in a little, and let's say this is good. I can, actually let me rotate just a little bit so I can show you. If I have the camera selected, go to Object, turn on Depth of Field, and with Set Focus Point, if I were to click somewhere, it focuses on that point. And if I were like increase the blur amount, you can really see that. So Set Focus Point. Seems like it's acting up a little, but it's supposed to be, there we go. So you can see it's focusing there on the center, and I probably want this center to be the focal point. So I'll just reduce that pretty dramatically, but that looks good. So let's go ahead and render this. These render settings on the left, I really don't see much of a difference with the presets, except in time. Like the quality of the render more or less looks the same from high to medium and so on, but it will take way longer. So probably you can avoid that. Just set it to medium. But for file type, the format, definitely set it as a PSD, because there's a little more options in the PSD I'll show you. So I'll just go and call it 01, save it to my downloads, and render it. Should take just a second. So bam, already done. And what I'll do is open Photoshop, and this is the little working file I'll show you in a second for the images I showed you earlier. But in my downloads, here is the little 001 I just rendered, and I double clicked on it, so it should open here in a second. And voila. What you'll notice is there's a couple things. So the background image and color, I mean, just you could just delete that. That doesn't really do anything. Rendered image is like the pre-noise, or rather, other way to phrase it. This is the denoise version, and then this is the actual render. So they kind of run a filter over it. So you probably don't even need this rendered image either. Just delete that because denoise is just better. But anyway, you'll notice there's a couple layers in this additional layers panel. So material selection and object selection are what they sound like. If you had a bunch of materials and a bunch of objects, you could really use this to make some easy selections, but we don't have, it's literally one material, one selection, or one object, so you don't need that. But you could really use this guy, the depth pass. So like you could use this to make masks and real intricate selections from the depth from the camera. But again, we don't need that either. But yeah, so we would use this, and you can drag and drop whatever image, let's say we wanted the pine tree. It's a little too bright, so you'd make the tweaks there, but you get the idea of like how quickly you can get really solid backgrounds. In this case, like this probably looks a little phony here on the back, and I would go in and paint more details, be it little bits of grass and gravel and rocks and things that are just more, sell that final percent, because right now it looks like clay almost. But to get you started, if you don't have the stock images, this is 100% solid. So if you want the working files, I'll put these in the description just so you can see exactly how I do it. But with any one of these, it's just a render, and this looks a little flat, so you just got to get it close, and then you'll do all your edits in Photoshop. I do a couple of high passes, a vignette to really draw the attention upwards, and then the logo. So that's how you can really quickly, as a graphic designer with zero 3D knowledge, you don't have to open Maya or Max or Cinema 4D or whatever it may be and bang your head against a wall trying to figure out how to set up a camera, and instead just use Stager and the Substance Collection to drag and drop assets, render out whatever scenes you need real quickly, and get some pretty convincing assets. So I hope that helps.